Ethan's our youth pastor, and we're going to be getting right into the lesson. We spent a lot of time some weeks ago introducing this topic of manipulation. We really only got to the third technique last time we were together. We discussed fear tactics, love bombing, and then moving the goalpost. So today I'd like to get right into the fourth tactic people use to manipulate. Now, before we do, let's remind ourselves manipulation is not merely a tactic of leadership in an attempt to get the people working for them or under them to accomplish a task. Remember, manipulation is the art or the desire to control someone. Leadership is the art to influence. Now, influence does not steal from the person their free will, does not steal from them choice. You are influencing them by showing them a better path, and the leader illustrates that better path and then encourages you to take a path you would not normally take. Manipulation essentially takes away from you the ability to choose without you even knowing it. You may think you have a choice, you don't. Manipulators have put you on a path. There is only one way to go. And the only way to get off of that path is to exit the manipulation altogether, because as long as you're on that path, the manipulator is in control. And whatever choices they let you make, so minor, don't actually change the direction you're going. All right, so manipulation is different from leadership. A lot of leaders do manipulate, but not always leaders. I've seen children manipulate parents, teenagers manipulate teachers. Manipulation is a problem of the human condition. It obviously is at its worst when someone is already in a place of authority and then uses manipulation. But I would say, and I have said, that manipulation is hardest to overcome in romantic relationships. When you are being manipulated by a leader, you are more likely to see it eventually than when you are being manipulated by someone you love, a lover. And so I think that it's very dangerous for people to get into relationships before they've established, is the person I'm going to date, get engaged to or marry, are they a manipulator? Because if you start loving them first, the blinders are on. And that's a scenario when your friends and your family says, that person's no good for you, what's wrong with you? And the manipulator says, it's either me or them because they're talking bad about me. And the blinders are on. You actually end up pushing away all the people that are healthy in your life. And you don't know this, but the manipulator has been the one to encourage you to do that. Now you're alone with the manipulator, in love with the manipulator, and they've got you.
I'm just going to backtrack a little bit, because you're talking about how, what was that you're saying earlier about leaders who before you went to the
a dangerous place to be is when you are being manipulated by a leader, because they already have some authority as a leader. Then they're using their manipulation to double down on the authority.
Yeah. So I was going to just piggyback off of that and say it's no wonder that people who are hurt by pastors either they leave church altogether, because if they understand church, if they're Christians who understand church, they understand that God is asking them in that church setting to engage in a personal relationship with somebody, but then it's hard to do that if you know you've been hurt. And if they do finally join a church, which our church has at least a few people in it who've experienced that, it takes a lot of time before they start warming up. Which I think one reason why, like our church, for example, it's taken a few years before we got to the point where now, okay, we can bring in these small group, these people, and train them for small group, because they've had to learn is this ministry worth trusting? Are you a leader worth giving their heart and their emotional investment to, their spiritual investment to?
Yeah, I would say that if you're coming out of a manipulative relationship romantically, you are less likely to get into a healthy one anytime soon. Right. Same if you come out of a religious church-related spiritual manipulation, you are less likely to jump into a healthy one.
Because a lot of the manipulation in that church setting is similar to what might happen in like a dating relationship. It's not necessarily the romantic side, but 100% is the emotional.
Yes,
100% emotional manipulation.
All right, so there are different techniques for manipulation. We talked about fear tactics, love bombing, moving the goalposts. Let's talk about lies and deception. Obviously, lies and deception are part of manipulation, right? If you're going to want to control someone, then you're going to want to control the narrative. Mm-hmm. That is a common phrase. People in politics, people in religion, people in workplaces, they understand the value of controlling the narrative, especially if you want to control people, which is why a lot, especially today in 2024, I would say more now than possibly in my lifetime, major news sources are trusted less now than ever before in my life. Why? Because recently, within the last 5 years, I think the world, definitely the nation of the U.S., has seen just how blatant these news companies are at manipulating the masses, at controlling the narrative and only giving pieces of information. And when you give a partial truth, you're essentially deceiving. When you give a mistruth, you are lying.
Right.
Either one of them is manipulation. Both of them are manipulation, although they don't both always look the same. A complete mistruth versus a partial truth. The partial truth, someone could say, well, I didn't lie. No, but you deceived. By holding back some information, you essentially set someone on this path without giving them all the details. By a mistruth, then that's just outright lying. But both of them I put under the same, number 4, lies and deception. Now, here's the thing about manipulators. Manipulators don't necessarily lie just to lie. There are chronic liars where they lie because they become addicted to lying. It's a habit now. They lie about things that don't even matter. They lie about things that they know they're going to get caught in, but they don't care anymore. They lie more often than they tell the truth. Then there are people who lie to protect themselves from consequences. That is not the manipulator. The manipulator actually is willing to accept consequences if it attains the greater good. If they can maintain control over the person, they'll even apologize, and they'll say, I was wrong, and accept the consequence, because it's not worth it to lie to lose control. So someone who is lying to protect themselves, someone who is lying because they're a chronic liar, I'm not saying they're not a manipulator, they just won't be a good one. Because a good manipulator will only use lying and deception when it maintains control of the other person, and then they will actually tell the truth to their own hurt to present this narrative that they can be trusted, that they are the person they claim to be, and get a deeper hold on you in the manipulation.
Yeah. I'm just, whenever, preparing for number 4, the first person that came to mind was Jacob. Just the way that throughout the whole timeline of his life, right up until the angel.
You're talking about Jacob and Esau, the
Jacob
brothers.
And Esau, yeah. Sorry, just to clear. Yeah, Jacob and Esau. Like that whole timeline there is him conniving and telling partial truths, or basically, using lies and deception to manipulate and find a way to make his way in the world.
Yeah, he controlled his brother, controlled his father.
Correct. Yeah.
It seems that his mother might also have been a manipulator, and he might have learned it from someone else.
It was definitely, it looks like some learned behavior there.
Yeah, because she helps him manipulate the father, her own husband, and his dad.
Yeah. Just looking at that story, not necessarily exactly what you were talking about there, but we start off with, first of all, there's, I guess part of the idea of between lying and deception in order to manipulate someone is the idea that you either create a need that someone has, or you see a need and you find a way to fulfill it, while the whole end goal being your own personal gain. So I'm just something that I was
taking
thinking
advantage
about.
of people's weaknesses.
Right, exactly. Which not the same track as what you were saying, but this is that from when I'm thinking about lies and deception. There's very few things that the purpose of that would be, other than to obviously, like, I want my own way, and I'm either creating you a need that you feel like you need. So wait, you need this food right now, right? You need it, you do need it. Yes, you want it. Okay, so before I give it to you, because I want to, I can.
Sure, you're talking about Jacob again, tricking
right.
his brother and giving him the birthright. Let's go deeper than that. Let's talk about present day.
Sure.
And I am very careful. I got 5 kids. Very careful on who I allow to teach and train my children, because I recognize that the human condition is to want to control the people. In fact, I think that we naturally are that way. I think that we have to actually fight to not do that. And a lot of adults may have good intentions. I'm not saying that everyone that does this sees the evilness of it. I think a lot of them have been manipulated, and in the manipulation of their own mind and their own belief system, they're just passing that on to someone else. But my biggest concern are educators, and I am one. I'm an educator on many levels. I'm an educator. I'm a math teacher. I'm a Bible teacher. I'm a pastor. So I get education. I also get the power that education has over those being educated, for good or for bad. And I am not just talking about education from, you might say, the public school, the world. I'm concerned about education even from Christians, because Christians are fully capable of manipulating and using the Bible to manipulate. And I think on both sides, you've got maybe someone who's not saved, doesn't go to church, a teacher, an educator in, let's just say, the public school, and then a Christian who's an educator in the church. I am concerned on both of these sides that the natural tendency of both is to manipulate children. Now, they're both going to manipulate them, control them towards a different end, right? So the church and the teacher in the educator in the church is going to control the child towards the end of what I would be concerned of, religion, rather than a relationship. You see, to help a child have a relationship with Christ, you can't manipulate that. That has to be natural. That has to be authentic. That can only be led. But you can manipulate a child to religion. And there's a lot of children that have been and are today being manipulated, controlled towards a religion. Whether the religion, I'm a Baptist or a Catholic or Pentecostal, doesn't matter. You can choose your flavor. But when it's a religion under any denomination, it's a problem. Because a religion, by its definition, is the attempt to please God with works. Baptists do it, Pentecostals do it, Catholics do it, Mormons do it. It doesn't matter. You mentioned the religion, you mentioned the denomination. There are people under every one of them
that try to do that,
who try to please God with works and then educate children, manipulate children, control children's minds and hearts to do the same. That's a very dangerous path to take. I'm very concerned about that. Then you've got folks who don't believe in God, don't believe in the Bible, and they're also going to want to educate, right? But not educate as in teach all sides, not educate as in show, not educate as in illustrate, but unfortunately educate as in control the minds. In fact, some people will call it what it is. It's called brainwashing. But manipulation on a child is essentially taking away from them the chance to choose. And I'm seeing that, Ethan, a lot in both Christian schools and public schools, where a child is not allowed to give an essay on the side that opposes what the teacher believes. Whether in the public school towards God or in the private school on a topic that maybe the Christian teacher doesn't agree with. I think that there obviously are some boundaries in a classroom. The children cannot control the classroom. I get that, whether in the public or private school. But when we do not allow children to have the free will to choose, when we're afraid of, if we show them both sides and we're afraid of what they'll choose, then we shouldn't be educators. We need to be so convinced that we have the truth that we shouldn't be afraid of the other side. Because we're convinced that in our lives, as the truth is illustrated and shown and lived out, that the child is given the best chance to choose the right path. Once we go down the road of manipulation, I don't care if it's religious manipulation or worldly manipulation, it's wrong.
I just can't but think it is so much easier to tell someone, I guess, to use an illustration, a common illustration, it's so much easier to give somebody a fish than to teach them how to.
Well, sure, it is much easier. And not only that, if you give them the fish, who are they dependent on? You. And they'll keep coming back for the fish, which is a form of manipulation.
100%.
That's the love bombing, you might say, as far as the gift giving. But yeah, teaching a child to fish, you lose control over that child because now they go fish on their own.
Right, so just, it's the idea of like, oh, here's what you should believe. Here's what you should believe. And the way they do that is by saying, oh, hey, here's what people believe, but if you do this person, if you believe this way, you're a bigot. If you do this way, you're just uneducated. This is the only clear right way, and then usually they don't really give a whole lot of. They say there's two options. You can choose our way
right
and
or wrong.
any other way. Right.
No, look. Of course, there is a right or wrong.
Correct.
Of course, there is a truth and a lie.
Correct.
My concern is not that someone who believes strongly in truth saying this is the truth and this is the lie. That's not my concern. My concern is using manipulation, lies, and deceit to only give truth, and when you present the other side, to present it unfairly. The straw man argument, to present it in a way where it doesn't actually match up to its own belief system. I think the best thing might be to say, if evolution is taught in Christian schools, I don't believe in evolution. We teach evolution here at Mid-State. We teach it as evolution itself is taught. We don't teach evolution in some generic way to make it something that it's not intended to be. We teach evolution to students 6th through 12th grade as not as long and not as in depth because it's not necessary at our school, but we do teach it as it is taught. A lot of people would teach evolution in a twisted way to make it look dumb. I mean, honestly, I gotta say, I feel like evolution is already has its own issues. Let me say that. But a lot of people want to treat it in a way where it has more issues than already that it has.
Right.
And then they think they're doing a service to the student. Here's the problem. That student is going to hear eventually evolution from an evolutionist. Going to say, oh, I never heard it that way.
Correct.
My teacher lied to me. They manipulated me. You are more prone to lose that child to evolution or whatever it might be because you didn't present it accurately when you taught.
Well, as you're saying earlier, there are certain boundaries of appropriateness for presenting opposing views. We're talking about, I guess, the idea of Christian worldview, presenting.
All right, we're in a Christian school proposing a worldview opposed to Christianity. Yes, there are boundaries.
There are
but when you
boundaries.
teach them,
Right.
don't misidentify them.
But yeah, and for sure, by the time someone's like a senior in high school, maybe even a junior, like they should be able to discern, why certain lifestyles are. Obviously, we know, okay, at a certain age, like maybe in middle school, okay, these are wrong. But by the time they're in high school, you should know at least, maybe not the practical, like here's practically why they're wrong, but here's the logic and the spiritual and biblical reason.
I think so as
this
well.
This is why it's wrong.
And so I would also expect the same on the world side.
Right.
Obviously, the world doesn't believe in the truth of the Bible. My concern is not that they don't believe the Bible. I would be shocked if they did. Mm-hmm. My concern is that when they present Christianity, unfortunately, then they do the same thing.
Correct.
Unfortunately, we do to them. And they present Christianity in a way that is not true to its source. Mm-hmm. They present the Bible. They present God in a way that's not accurate. And so they're manipulating children by taking away the information, lies and deception, to control them down a path that they want them to take. But again, religion does the same thing. Not all the time. Not all public school teachers do that, and not all Christian school teachers do that. But I am very concerned about how easily manipulated children are, and especially for my 5 kids, I want to know that the people teaching my kids are teaching them, not manipulating them.
Well, on the subject of faith and theology, like when when we have pastors or just teachers who are giving a bad view, an incorrect view of God as purely a judge, purely fire and brimstone.
Yep. That itself would be deception,
right,
and a form of manipulation.
Right. And it's 100% manipulation, but you see the heart behind it, and the heart is like, well, I don't want these kids to be a statistic.
Yes, that is often the case.
I feel like that's most of the time that's the case.
If we can scare them onto the right path, at least they're on the right path.
Right, like if you ever do this, it will go from forget A to B to C. We'll go all the way to Z. Like if A happens, Z automatically will happen.
So their justification is at least I've got the kid on the right path. But here's the thing: the human condition is more than just where you are. The human condition is how you are, where you are. And God desires that we are in a healthy place as we are taking the right path. Manipulation steals from you the healthy emotional and spiritual condition.
Well, and I would also add to that, we do know that God's word does not return void. We know that God's word doesn't necessarily need us to defend it as much as just present it, right? Because it will speak for itself.
Yes, it will.
And
not only that, the Holy Spirit will do all the work that needs to be done in presenting it more than we did.
So when I see churches that do that, when I see parents who tell their kids to be good, be good or the boogeyman will get you. Something like teaching or talking like that. It really does boil down to either you're not actually 100% secure in your beliefs as a Christian. You're not confident that what you believe in actually will work. You don't even know that you're not actually fully convinced yourself that what you believe in is going to work, because you have to use this manipulation to get them to see that, hey, this is actually the right way to go.
Manipulation destroys the free will of the person you are supposedly trying to help. Once that person realizes that you destroyed their free will, they are more likely to run from you and everything you taught them than if you had just presented both sides accurately and let them choose.
Yeah, I agree.
Unfortunately, not many do agree with me, Ethan, and you got to find a lot of educators who are very good manipulators. They don't know that they're manipulators. They don't admit that they're manipulators, but when they are lying and deceiving kids on either side of the truth spectrum, they are manipulating. And here's what I read in Proverbs 26, verse 18. As a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor, and then saith, am I not in sport? Basically saying it's not that big deal. Right? Come on, man. I mean, is it really a big problem if I only gave you part of the information, you couldn't handle it anyways, or is this joking or whatever? Trying to downplay the lies and deception. It's the same as if this person is casting death and fire arrows at you. This is one verse among many in the book of Proverbs and throughout the Bible that talks about the destructive nature of lies and deception. One of the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not lie. I mean, God placed it there. The 7 abominations, lies. So whenever God is talking about major offenses in the Old Testament, lies are at the top.
Yep.
And yet here we are as Christians lying to people. We may have in our heads the greater good. If we tell them the truth, what would they do with the truth? I knew a guy one time, he was a pastor, in a different state, and we were having a conversation about the free will of man and about the fact that someone can live in sin and still be saved. The pastor originally said, no, you can't do that. If you live in sin, you're not saved. I said, where in the Bible does it say a Christian doesn't live in sin? Well, the fruit thing and the parable. And I said, well, the parable and a fruit is the consequence of a Christian walking close to Christ, not necessarily the consequence of a Christian. There are plenty of examples, Old and New Testament, where believers are living in sin and pay the consequences for it. Samson is one of them in the Old Testament. We find believers in the New Testament having the similar problems. And I said, so it is very possible for a Christian to live in sin and still be saved. The pastor then looked at me and said, Russ, all right, you may be right, but what would people do if we told them that? That is exactly what I told him. I said, Pastor, it is not your responsibility to keep people on the path of right. It is your responsibility to present truth as God's words gives it. Yeah. But in his head, he was doing people a favor by making them believe the only way you're saved is if you do right. I think in his opinion, scared them straight.
Yeah. Well, I think a modern term for that would be, gatekeeping, where you are intentionally hiding knowledge, hiding truth for some good, usually one that you cooked up in your own head. And obviously, there is nothing wrong with desiring people to do the right thing, but when the way you accomplish that is you supposedly accomplish that by lying to them, by taking truths and we say twisting, the Bible calls it perverting it, then obviously we're in the territory of sin, but we're also in danger of creating people who, when they find out that you've been lying to them as a parent, as a father, as a husband, as a leader, as a pastor, etc., then they might just reject everything altogether.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. We're going to try to wrap things up here tonight. Sure. So the fifth technique when it comes to manipulation is the manipulator playing the victim. So the manipulator essentially is convincing the one they're trying to control that the world is out to get them. No one cares about me. No one loves me. No one helps me. I've only gotten to this place where I'm at currently by pulling myself here because everyone's against me. And essentially what they're doing is playing to the empathy, the compassion of the individual. Now, that doesn't work on everyone because someone with no empathy isn't going to be manipulated with that particular technique. That's why there's more than one technique. The manipulators have realized that there are different personalities that are more likely to fall under manipulation of one technique over the other. But those who have empathy, oh man, they are so easily manipulated by victimhood. Do you see how much this is playing out on a world level, changing the definition of marriage, changing the definition of morality? And what is the main tactic and technique that this group has been using since I was in college? It has been the victim. Mm-hmm. The world is out to get us. Everyone hates us. And so the world, wanting to show empathy, jumps in their corner. Even people who say, we don't agree with you, but we're going to support you because we have empathy for victims. We want to, we root for the victims. We root for the underdogs. Man, look at what this movement has achieved through this technique of playing the victim.
I was just going to say, that is one of the biggest problems with the modern day church is because they truly, the church's job is to
have compassion.
Have compassion.
And
right?
if they're going to be empathetic, it would be a Christian. You would expect it to be a Christian.
Right. And so then, and I see this all the time, I sometimes wander to the dark side of Instagram or Facebook just to see what are these people? What are people across the aisle saying? Right, not necessarily politically, but spiritually. Right, what do they say about this? And it's just funny. Well, if you were a Christian, if you really loved us, mm-hmm. then you wouldn't say that. You believe something different, which is not true, because then they're taking their sin and saying, if you loved God, if your God was true loving, then you would see us in our state and reach out to us and help us. So you're the one who's wronging us.
Reaching out and helping you is not the same as embracing a decision or supporting a lifestyle.
Right. So I guess you could almost mix in there that along with playing the victim, you do have to be a deceitful person because you have to portray a situation.
I'm going to disagree. Not necessarily have to be deceitful. You have to be either deceitful or a deceived person. Victims are often deceived themselves. They really do believe that the world's out to get them. It's not true, but they believe that.
That's true.
And so in their own deception, they play the part that they believe they have and use it to control people. Now, I'm not saying there aren't some out there who truly know, like, I'm not a victim, but I'm going to act like one anyways. Obviously, there are people like that.
Sure.
I don't know, honestly, if it's a majority. I think a majority of people who use this technique
Are the deceived?
don't even know that they're manipulating and don't even know that they're deceived. But they are using that mindset, that deceived mindset, to control the masses, to control people's belief systems and philosophies and even theology, to control others to agree with me because I'm the victim. Look, if your belief system requires you to agree out of empathy, then it's not a strong belief system.
Yeah.
Your belief system should have such strong evidence, for the world, let's say scientifically, factual, logically, right? Because the world's not going to use the Bible. Their belief system must be so strongly founded in facts, evidence, scientific, and logic that empathy should not need to play any part in getting people to agree if it's really true.
Yeah.
And yet, how often do you see science, logic, or facts used by this group of people we're talking about to get followers? You don't. They use empathy, which is a form of manipulation. Empathy as in, I'm the attacked, I'm the underdog, feel bad for me.
Right.
How would the world feel if Christians did the same thing? Oh, the world hates us. Be a Christian because everyone hates us. Be a Christian because, everyone's out to get us. The world will be like, what? That's not going to work, man. Where's the facts? Where's the logic? Where's the science? Exactly. I just want them to treat us the same way we expect to be treated by them.
Well, there are churches like that.
Like what?
Like that. Like the world's out to get us. We are part of the few.
Yeah, well, it's not a good look, is it?
No, it's not a good look.
And the world's not impressed by it, is it?
They're very small churches.
The world's not impressed by it. It's not a good look. My point is, it's a game the world wants to play against everyone, but doesn't like to be played against in the same way.
Right, because it's a logical fallacy. There's, you just have to poke a little hole in the wall, and then it all crumbles.
Yeah. So empathy can't be a foundation for a truth. Unfortunately, it is a very strong foundation for control. Control of the truth, back to the deception and lies, because the person is deceived into thinking they are a victim. And so using the deception on their own mind, playing the victim to control other people to join the cause.
So I don't know if we've been doing this for all the points up to this point, but how does someone reckon? I feel,
we did earlier, didn't we,
Yeah,
for
for
the
number
others?
five. Well,
All right,
so
so
number
for the lies
5
and deception is just know the truth, right?
Right.
The best way to see through the fog of war is to know the art of war. The
Right.
best way to see through deception is to know truth. So that's an easy one.
Right.
If you don't know truth, you're easily deceived.
But this one here, I feel like is so difficult because those who are deceived by it are led by emotions. They're very empathetic.
Then I would say the best way to not be controlled and manipulated through playing the victim is to understand that empathy does not need to be attached to love. 1 Corinthians 13, love, is how you treat people, how you interact with people. And I would say, as you said earlier, it is expected, assumed, even biblically, that a Christian would be empathetic. But at some point, empathy actually is counterproductive to the relationship, because the person that you're empathetic towards is a victim, is playing the victim, and empathy only encourages and enables them. Whereas love, in truth, can separate itself from empathy when necessary. Now, someone who always has 1 Corinthians 13 love and never empathy probably doesn't have 1 Corinthians 13 love, right? To always separate love from empathy, to always say, I love you but never care about you, I love you but I never have compassion or empathy, do you really have love? But the person who has love and wisdom should know there are times where my love needs to be separated from my empathy. Like a parent who disciplines a child. If the parent always has empathy attached to their love, the child will be spoiled because the discipline will always be non-existent or not effective, right? So at some point, the parent has to remove the empathy and say, I've got to do what's best for this child. Even though it breaks my heart, I got to remove that empathy, and I got to do what's right because I love this child.
Maybe not necessarily splitting apart empathy from 1 Corinthians, but maybe saying that the most loving thing to do in a situation might not be to be empathetic. And sometimes it is to be empathetic.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Okay,
I
cool.
can take that statement and
Okay,
move
cool.
on. All right.
Okay, cool.
So I see in the Bible, we're going to talk about a verse real quick, and that's going to be in, where are we at? Matthew. So in Matthew 16, verse 24, then Jesus said unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. God doesn't want victims in his group of disciples. God wants tough, courageous, sacrificial followers. And here's the thing about a victim. A victim doesn't sacrifice. A victim wants everyone else to sacrifice. A victim says, I've been forced to sacrifice already too much. Don't ask me to sacrifice anymore. Now, they're deceived. That statement, I've been forced to sacrifice, may or may not be true, but in their deception, they think it is. They're not looking to continue sacrificing when they thought they already have. Some victims literally will say, my ancestors sacrificed, so I shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
They're literally relying on the sacrifice, supposed, and for some actual sacrifice, of people from decades, hundreds of years ago, to eliminate any need for them to sacrifice today. But what do they require? Everyone else to sacrifice for them. Whereas God calls out Christians and says, I'm not looking for you to require others to sacrifice. You're not the victim here. God says, I'm looking for you to sacrifice for others.
Luke chapter 9, I mean, there's that, along the same vein there, they have 3 different people who approach Christ, say, hey, I want to be with you. I want to be one of your followers. I will follow you. And then he presents them with these 3 different people.
Sacrifices. One form of sacrifice or another.
Right. And one of them actually even says, hey, let me, I'll follow you, but first I want to take one of my family members is dying.
Yeah.
Or they're going to die soon. We don't know.
Father, yep.
Right. Yeah, my father's going to die, or he's dying, or he's going to die soon, I believe. So let me take care of that
be
first.
with him until he's dead.
Right.
Yes.
And so I'll do that. And that's just another instance of, well, Christ's response to that was, hey, look, you're either with me or you're not. Don't play my emotion. Don't play games with your devotion to me.
The statement is
Make a
actually
choice.
let the dead take care of the dead,
Right.
which is essentially
right.
let those who are just waiting to die take care of those who are waiting to die.
Right.
But I have another opportunity for you, and that's an opportunity towards life, not waiting for death.
Yeah, I guess that was I was not paraphrasing, but like that's really what he's saying. Like, hey, they could do that, but this is what I'm offering you now. So
That requires sacrifice, though.
Yeah.
The sacrifice of a relationship, walking away from a relationship of someone you care about who is either on their deathbed or could die in a year or in a decade. You never know. That is a sacrifice. The other one, of course, is the rich young man who had to sacrifice his wealth. Mm-hmm. And so God doesn't want victims.
Right.
God wants servants.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it for tonight. We're not going to be getting together next Sunday. Next Sunday is the last Sunday of the month, and we take that Sunday off. And so we'll continue again in the next time around, and that's the first Sunday in March. Hope you guys have a great night.